Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Carolyn Spry. I'm the awards administrator for the Golden Crown Literary Awards, and I want to welcome you to the first ever series of Goldie Finalist Spotlights. For those new to the Golden Crown Literary Society, we recognize and reward quality literary works about women who love women, and we provide learning opportunities, encouragement, and assistance to new and established writers. We have a highly respected writing academy that is currently taking applications. We have an annual conference, which is a gathering of hundreds of readers, writers, publishers, and editors. And our virtual conference is starting up in just a few weeks. And we have a monthly GCLS members only online book club. So we do invite you to learn more about the GCLS and perhaps even become a member by visiting our website at goldencrown.org. We'll have some time at the end of the session for Q&A. So please come up with some questions and be sure to use the Zoom Q&A box to submit the questions. If you run into technical issues, please log off and then log back in. That is usually going to resolve most issues. There is closed captioning available. You can turn it on in your Zoom screen by clicking on the arrow next to the CC button. And we're thrilled to have Flashpoint Publications as our sponsor today. And let's take just a bit of time to hear from them.
At Flashpoint Publications, it is our mission to bring LGBTQIA+ stories to life. In support of the growing multiracial and multi-age coalition of those who demand unbiased treatment and inclusion in all pursuits, we welcome you into our house. We support diversity within our works and welcome novels penned by and for all people. Flashpoint is a proud member of GCLS, and we wish to congratulate all the finalists, including our own authors, Tammy Bird and Kay Ayton. We hope to see everyone in person next year.
Okay, thank you so much, Flashpoint. We do appreciate your support. Let's go ahead and get started, and let me introduce you to our authors today. And we are going to get things started with Jessie J. Thoma, reading from Serenity, which is a finalist in contemporary romance mid-length novels. Next will be Jane Alden, reading from a finalist in mystery thriller crime, The Crystal's Curse. Then we'll hear from Erin Dutton, reading a selection from 3 Alarm Response, a finalist in fiction anthologies and collections. And we'll close out the reading portion of our session with Carolyn Elizabeth, reading from her shortlisted paranormal occult horror novel, The Other Side of Forestlands Lake. And Jane, okay, there's Jane. So there are our lovely authors today. Look at their happy smiling faces. Aren't they great? So now we are going to give the floor to Jessie. So Jessie, go ahead and take over.
Hello, I'm Jessie Thoma. I write for Bold Strokes Books. And just a quick summary, my writing's been described as skirting the edges of polite society, which I believe can mean just about anything, but I do kind of enjoy that description of the types of novels that I write. So I'm reading from Serenity, as was mentioned. I'll get this just in the right spot or it blurs. It's the story of Kit, who's in active recovery from a opioid use disorder. And Thea, who's a head librarian at a local library, who also has a complicated history with substance use. So where we're going to meet them is they're walking home from their first date, which was at a ball game. And that's where we're going to pick up. Thea breathed in the warm evening air and sighed with contentment. She'd never particularly enjoyed holding hands with anyone until she slipped her hand in Kit's. I had a great time at the game, Thea said. There's nothing this night has to offer that holds a candle to you. Something fell out of a tree and thunked off Kit's shoulder, which is why the squirrels are throwing things at me. Right on cue, a squirrel on a low branch started chattering at them as they walked past. You know, catcalling a lady on the sidewalk is no way to behave. Are you defending my honor from a squirrel? Only if you think it's charming, Kit said. You are a charmer and you seem to know how to make me laugh. 2 points in your favor. Ah, point system. I can work with that, Kit said. Thea had a rash urge to grab fistfuls of Kit's sexy shirt, shove her back against the nearest wall, and kiss her until she'd had her fill. Thea involuntarily pulled her hand from Kit's and immediately felt the withdrawal acutely. It felt like switching off the lights the moment their hands disconnected, like the electricity was shut off. Hey, is everything okay? Kit moved around so she was facing Thea. She looked concerned. Did I say something wrong? God, no. Thea put her hands over her face. I freaked myself out, I'm sorry. Freaked out about what? Kit gently pulled Thea's hands away from her face. Is it me, my past? Thea grabbed Kit's hands and intertwined their fingers. It felt like the power was restored to the entire block. She put her other hand on Kit's cheek. No, Kit, not about you. It's true you're dissimilar to anyone I've ever dated or thought I could date. This might sound familiar, but before people were unsurprising and felt safe. You aren't predictable, and I think I kind of like that, but it's making me react in ways I'm not used to. That's what scared me. Oh, the old "it's not you, it's me" speech, Kit said. Thea dropped her hands to her side. She wasn't sure what else to say to make Kit understand. She was gearing up to try again when she felt Kit's hands on her face, then in her hair. Thea looked up. Kit moved closer so they were only inches apart. Thea thought she might combust. Kit said, if you need me to change something, just tell me. Thea put her hands over Kit's. I don't need you to change. It feels incongruous to everything I need in my life, but I like being a little off balance with you. You still make me feel like I'm safe. Okay, well, next time you start to lose your balance, keep holding my hand. Kit tilted her head and leaned in. She kissed Thea on the cheek, then slipped her hand back into Thea's and kissed the top of Thea's hand. Damn it. Thea sighed internally, disappointed in the lost moment. When they reached Thea's house, she wasn't ready for the evening to end, but she wasn't ready to invite Kit in either. Kit didn't look like she was in a hurry to get home, but she was clearly leaving the next step up to Thea. She took a few seconds to make up her mind. Do you have to be home? Thea asked. No curfew tonight, Kit said. Okay, have a seat. I'll be right back with something to drink. A porch picnic? That sounds lovely. Thea brought lemonade and snacks outside. Kit was leaning casually against the porch railing. Thea wondered if Kit had any idea how hot she was. Did she frequently cause car accidents just walking down the street? Thea would have trouble concentrating if Kit walked by. Kit helped with the lemonade and sat on the stoop, making a spot for Thea to settle in between her legs. Against her better judgment, Thea sat down and leaned back into Kit. Her body felt incredible. Thea could feel the strong muscles and solid body of someone who had a physically demanding job, but Kit also had the softness and curves that Thea loved. Kit wrapped her arms around Thea and held her close. She didn't seem in any hurry to leave their date after party. They stayed that way for a long while, cuddled together on the stoop, talking about all manner of things and looking up at the stars. Thea ran inside to get a candle, ostensibly to keep the bugs away, but also because it seemed to match the mood of the moment. She could have sat happily on the stoop until morning, but eventually Kit had to go. When they parted, Thea wasn't sure if she wanted the first kiss or if she wanted more time. Kit saved her the agonizing by sweetly kissing her on the cheek and running her hand through her hair softly. I'm going to do what I had planned when we first got back. I'll make sure you get inside safely. Kit didn't look like she wanted to let Thea go inside at all. Kit, I've been in and out a bunch of times already, Thea said. I know, but if you go in now, then I can skip and dance my way down the street like a fool and you won't see me. Kit grinned. Only the envious squirrels will know how happy I am after going out with you tonight, and they're jerks anyway, so who cares what they think? God, you're cute. Thea's stomach flipped and she felt her smile down to her bones. That's good, right? Kit cocked her head to the side. I mean, puppies are cute, but you just coo at them and encourage them not to poop on the rug. It's very good. Thea patted Kit on the cheek and tried to hide the enormous smile that was threatening to break free. I'm going inside now. You may commence dancing, but don't forget, I do have windows. Kit blew Thea a kiss as she walked backward down the street. Thea went inside, but stole a glance out the window. As promised, Kit was doing a celebratory jig down the street. Thea loved it. She especially loved that it was for her. Maybe sticking a toe or a whole foot outside her comfort zone wasn't such a bad idea after all.
Nicely done. Thank you so much, Jessie. Good reading. And now we are going to turn things over to Jane Alden.
Hello.
Hi, Jane.
Hi. I'm going to be reading from The Crystal's Curse from Desert Palm Press. Crystal's Curse is my third novel and my first mystery. Great fun to write, and I hope you find it fun to listen to. It's 1977. Ari Morgan is graduating from Barnard College and at the same time ending a relationship with Eleanor, her English professor. She's facing a pretty unsettling summer. Eleanor steered us toward the campus gate off Broadway. Let's go across the street to Columbia, more privacy. I'd miss a lot about my 6-month affair with Eleanor. I started making a list in my head. Number 1, She was hot as hell. Underneath the silk blouse and A-line skirt, tastefully accessorized with a set of perfectly matched pearls, she had the body of Wonder Woman. We passed a plate glass window, and our reflections followed us down the sidewalk. The couple in the window brought up number 2 on my list. Even though Eleanor looked ultra graceful and feminine, she was the top in bed. She decided what we did and when we did it. I loved that paradox. But I could also make another list of what I wouldn't miss. Number 1, she was paranoid people would find out about us, even though it was common knowledge that every semester she took on an acolyte to worship at the altar of her wonderfulness. It was practically an item in the freshman orientation handbook. We never went anywhere together in public. We spent all our time in her apartment, a really swanky one on the Upper East Side on 96th, overlooking the park. We stayed in bed or read aloud to each other or worked out in a room furnished as a fully equipped gym. After a semester of our affair, I was a lot more sexually sophisticated. I was beginning to understand Gertrude Stein, and I was in the best shape of my life. Against my will, my mind skipped back to the list of things I'd miss. Number 3, she was really smart and also really funny. When I told her I was starting to get Gertrude Stein's prose, she said, Alice B. Toklas wrote in her journal, "This has been a most wonderful evening. Gertrude has said things tonight it will take her 10 years to understand." Eleanor may be the only person in the world who knows that quote and finds exactly the right time to toss it into a casual conversation. Listing the good and bad wasn't working out so well to make me feel better about the breakup. I tried to create numbers 2 and 3, etc., of things I wouldn't miss, but it came up empty. She was pretty great, and she never misled me. She was clear from the beginning our relationship had a shelf life of a few months. Some metal cafe tables with spindly leg chairs, mostly unoccupied, sat across from the coffee cart. We took our coffees to one of the tables. She leaned toward me with her forearms braced on the tipsy surface. I recognized the crease between her brows, signaling her tension. "Babe, are you all right?" Number 2 on the dislikes list, babe. I hated her calling me that. I moved the table a little, trying to find a steadier spot for it. "No, but I will be." She searched my face, then blew out a breath and opened her briefcase. She took out a piece of cream-colored notepaper, folded in half. She tapped the paper against her thumbnail. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was weighing whether to show it to me or not. "I may have an idea for your summer." She made up her mind and handed it to me. It was heavy paper, the kind you find in a little shop on Madison Avenue, where you wander in some Saturday afternoon, look around and ask yourself, who in hell would pay this kind of money for paper? I unfolded it. On it was written in a bold hand, Cassandra Stillwell, and a phone number. I tossed the paper back on the table between our coffee cups. "Who's she?" "She's an acquaintance of mine, a visiting professor at Columbia. She's looking for an assistant for the summer, and she asked me if I knew anyone. I told her I might." "What kind of an assistant?" "She's an archaeologist, quite a well-known one. She's going to Egypt in a few days, and she wants a helper to go with her." "Why would you think of me? I don't know anything about archaeology or Egypt." "You're a wonderful writer and detail-oriented, and your main job would be keeping a careful record of her work, sort of a scribe. Also, you'd be a good temperamental match for her. You're level-headed, and Cass is unconventional and intense." "Intense how?" "She's quite brilliant, I think, but she has some unusual theories about research in archaeology. She challenges some of the commonly held ideas about the subject, but don't ask me any details. I'm out of my depth." So far, Eleanor was listing reasons Cassandra Stillwell should pick me to go with her to Egypt. Why did she think working for this archaeologist would be a good idea for me? From Eleanor's point of view, my being in the middle of the Sahara Desert halfway around the world would serve one purpose for sure. This job would get me out of town and off her conscience. Why should I consider it? She picked up the phone number and absentmindedly unfolded and refolded it. It's entirely up to you, of course. A summer in Egypt would be an interesting experience and useful on your resume. You don't want to go home to North Carolina for 3 months, do you? Putting myself in your shoes, if I were your age and graduating with 3 months looming before me, I'd at least meet her. I took the paper out of her hand. Whatever Eleanor's motive, the job might be something to consider. Could be a win-win for both of us. Maybe I'll call her. Good. She leaned back in her chair. The pearls settled into the crevice between her perfect breasts. She followed my gaze to her chest. Would you like to come to the apartment for some dinner tonight? A confident smile played around her mouth. I wanted to, and I didn't want to. Can I call you later? If I'm going to contact Cassandra Stillwell, I should do it now before she finds somebody else. Of course. She was surprised that I hadn't jumped at the chance to be with her. Her shrug had a studied nonchalance to it. Good enough.
Nicely done. Thank you so much, Jane.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated. Erin, the floor is yours, my friend.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. I will be reading from 3 Alarm Response, which is my 16th book, and it is a collection of 3 novellas that all feature first responders. The first being about firefighter, the second novella features a police officer, and the third one features paramedic. And I'm going to actually read from the third novella. And what you need to know is Candace and Jenna are good friends, and they're also partnered together as paramedics on the ambulance. And Jenna has just returned recently from a severe injury that had her off work for a little while. When they got back to the station, a couple of the guys assigned to the engine talked about starting a card game. Candace grabbed a seat at the table. Jenna, you in? I'm not in the mood for cards. They all watched her until she cleared the hallway, headed for the fitness room. Then they went back to playing cards. The first time Candace had played, she'd expected poker. And when they told her they liked rummy, she smothered a laugh. 3 burly firefighters with big, broad shoulders, 2 of them with shaved heads, sitting around playing rummy struck her as hilarious. But then she joined in and was as addicted as they were. What the fuck is Teal's problem lately? She's too good to hang out with us these days? Come on, guys, she's been through a lot. Candace picked up her cards and fanned them in her hand to look at them. She's not the first person to be injured on the job. Half the guys in this room have been hurt at one time or another. But hey, man, we firefighters are tough. Maybe paramedics aren't built to withstand what we can, especially not lady paramedics. Candace shook her head, deciding not to dignify that comment with a response. Well, whatever's wrong, she just needs to get her shit together, because we're starting to get tired of her sulking around here like we were the ones driving that damn car. Candace grimaced. That one was over the line, and she was about to tell him so when she heard a noise behind her. You all don't have anything better to do than sit and talk about me when I'm out of the room like a bunch of gossiping old women? Jenna stood in the doorway, hands planted on her hips. Her face shone with sweat, and a triangle dampened the front of her shirt down over her chest. Candace had to look away. She didn't work out with Jen anymore for one reason. Hot and sweaty, Jenna Teal was too much for Candace to handle. Relax, Teal, one of the guys said. He looked at Candace and grinned, and she knew what he was about to say was only going to make it worse. Cooper, can't you keep this woman under control? What? Jenna strode several steps into the room. What did you just say? She asked, louder this time. Candace jumped up and crossed to her, sticking out her arm to bar Jenna from moving closer, though she could easily have pushed past her. Come on, let's go talk. She grabbed Jenna's arm and steered her out of the room. Jenna let herself be led, but her stiff posture said she was still ready to fight. That's such bullshit. Would he tell one of the guys to keep the other one under control? Jenna asked as they left the room. Candace knew they could hear her, but thankfully none of them responded. And what were you doing? Just sitting there letting them talk? Jenna strode into the bunk room, then spun around and advanced back towards Candace. What? No. She tried to play back the conversation in her head. She'd defended Jenna, hadn't she? Not that she was obligated to. Their coworkers had a right to their opinions about her recent behavior, and Jenna hadn't done any explaining of her own. I've been making excuses for you when everyone says you need to get your head out of your ass. Who? Who said that? It doesn't matter. They're all assuming that this still has to do with your injury, and maybe it does, but that can't be all of it because this pissy attitude of yours only started a couple of weeks ago. Jenna rolled her eyes upward and shook her head. Just talk to me, Jenna. Regardless of what you think, I'm on your side. I didn't ask you to be. I'm your partner. You don't have to ask. Well, maybe we shouldn't be partners anymore. Pain knifed through Candace so severely that she gasped at her chest. Then realizing what the motion gave away, she covered by opening her palm and smoothing her shirt as if straightening it. If that's what you want, I'm sure Warnke could get you a transfer, but you'll have to be the one to leave because I like it here. She wasn't so much attached to the rest of the guys, but this station was closest to her house. And if Jenna was going to initiate the split, then Candace figured that meant she had to be the one to leave. She was honestly surprised she got anything out and wasn't doubled over right now. She forced her chin up, keeping her eyes straight ahead as she turned and left the room. What more could she say after all? As much as she disliked every other person she'd been partnered with, and as much as she cherished the time she spent riding with Jenna, she was still above begging her to partner with her. She'd tried to be there, and now, more than ever, Jenna seemed determined to push her away. Maybe it was time to let her succeed.
Nicely done, Erin. Thank you so much for the great reading. And now we have Carolyn Elizabeth. Carolyn, the floor is yours.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Carlene. Hey, everyone. Thanks for being here, and I hope you are all having a meaningful Juneteenth. I am Carolyn Elizabeth, and I will be reading from The Other Side of Forestlands Lake, which is camouflaged by my background. Okay. It's published with Bella Books. At its heart, The Other Side of Forestlands Lake is a ghost story, but for those of you who are turned off by scary stories, it's really not that scary. Maybe at most a little creepy or unsettling. The story is also a second chance romance between main characters Willa Dunn and Lee Chandler, who spent their summers growing up together at Forestlands Lake. A tragedy tears them apart when they're teenagers, and they lose contact for 25 years. They reconnect at 40 years old. They are back at the lake trying to sort out if there is a future for them while trying to solve a decades-old murder and haunting. The excerpt I've chosen is early on in the story where Willa and Lee are still teenagers, and they've gone out to the local teenage bonfire spot in the woods with Willa's little sister, Emily. They have a short time before their end of the summer party starts to attempt to contact the spirit of a little girl who may or may not have died at the lake a year earlier, and with whom Emily is a little bit obsessed. I'm going to get the fire started. Lee moved around the clearing and began gathering up broken branches. The fire pit was nothing more than a shallow depression in the dirt full of charred wood, beer cans, and cigarette butts. Lee scowled at a used condom before kicking dirt over it and scanning the area for anything else Emily shouldn't see as she wandered around, looking over the logs and stumps set around the pit in an irregular circle for seating. Emily brushed away some leaves and dirt next to a stump. What's this? She held up a red plastic bong. Willa looked up from the stump where she was setting up the spirit board. It's a hummingbird feeder. Oh, Emily set it back down. Lee coughed a laugh and turned her attention to collecting wood and leaves for kindling. Toss me the matches, Will? Lee layered dried twigs and leaves, and it only took one match to catch and set the small pile burning merrily enough to toss on some bigger branches to get it really going. Leave it, Lee, it's fine. We're going to run out of time. Willa waved her over. Lee set two bigger logs across the top of the growing fire and wiped her hands on her sweatshirt. Where should I sit? Across from me. Willa lit the candles nestled safely in the dirt around them. Emily was already perched on a stump to Willa's right. The spirit board on a stump in front of Willa canted slightly from the uneven surface. Lee rolled a stump over and set it upright, perching on it and scooting him closer so she could reach the board and place her fingers on the planchette. Good? A cool wind whipped through the trees, flickering the candles and sending sparking leaves from the fire fluttering up into the dark. Just follow me and let me move the planchette around to warm up the board, Willa instructed them, circling the board in a slow, sweeping motion. Warm up the board? Lee smirked and looked at Emily, sending her into a fit of giggling. Shh. Willa stilled the planchette in the middle of the board, closing her eyes. We welcome a connection with any spirits with good intentions who wish to communicate with us. If you mean us no harm, please move the planchette to yes. The air was filled with the pop and snap of the fire and the blustery cracks of the wind through the forest while they waited for several long moments. Will? Emily whispered, eyes darting around before looking intently at Willa. Can you ask for her by name? Willa cracked an eye toward her sister's longing expression and sighed. Sasha Mathers, if you're out there, please speak with us. We're friends. Lee tensed when the forest went eerily still, as if someone had hit mute and not a whisper of sound could be heard. A beat later, a chill gust of wind blew through the clearing, bending the flames of the fire and putting out 2 candles. A loud staccato popping sound overlaid with a deep groaning creak had them leaping to their feet with panicked shrieks. Emily gripped Willa's hand tightly. Will, what is that? Lee's eyes darted around frantically, unable to pinpoint the source as the popping grew louder and more rapid, followed by a tremendous crash onto the forest floor, and then nothing but the crackle of the fire. Lee released a shaky breath, her hand going to her chest. She stared hard into the forest. It was just a tree falling over, probably from the wind. A crack like a gunshot went off behind them. Emily screamed and they jumped and whirled around when a burning log exploded, sending flames and sparks high into the night sky. Holy crap, Willa gasped, her hands covering her mouth. I want to go home, Emily whimpered, clutching at Willa's arm. A hysterical laugh burst from Lee's throat. That scared the hell out of me. The forest came alive down the path with laughter, loud footfalls and bobbing flashlights, and the ear-piercing screech of the wagon wheel. What the hell is with all the screaming? David Osterhaus asked as he staggered up the trail, pulling the Earl's red wagon with the quarter keg perched precariously atop. Brian Black pushed from the side, making sure it didn't topple over, and they were followed by James and Leah Earl, Harmony and Don Wilkins, and Mike Black. Why can't you fix that wheel? I think my ears are bleeding. Did you hear that tree bite? Crazy. Who started the fire? Can someone pour me a beer? They all talked over each other while Willa blew out the candles that hadn't already been extinguished by the wind and packed up the case. No one seemed to notice or care what they had been up to. Will, are you all right? Lee asked quietly. Willa's head bobbed as she latched the case. Yeah, why? Lee gripped her hand gently. You're shaking. Willa's smile looked forced. I'm fine, but what? We didn't say goodbye. Goodbye to who? Willa tapped the word on the case. After you make contact with a spirit, you have to say goodbye to close the door to the other side. Ah, Lee laughed hesitantly. Are you serious? You think we made contact with someone? Yes, I'm serious. Willa slipped the case into her backpack. And I have no idea if we made contact, but better safe than sorry. Sorry how?
Well done. Thank you very much. Okay, everybody else, come back on. Let's have the other 3 join us. Okay, happy smiley faces. Scary part. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody. Great readings this afternoon. Really enjoyed them. Now, audience members out there, you may or may not have noticed, I hope you noticed that in the chat, I have been putting in links that you can just click on them and go purchase these books if you have not done so already. So here we have 4 people who have put a lot of themselves into writing these books. And let's face it, kids, they're not in it for the money. Because if they were, they'd be a little delusional. So let's support them. Go buy their books. Click those links, buy those books if you haven't done so already, and read them. And because these are Goldie Finalists, people. These are Goldie Finalists, and that's kind of an awesome thing. Now I want to, and again, if you've got questions, put them in the Q&A. knock your socks off. Go for it. Ask some questions. But in the meantime, I've got some questions. And I'm going to start with, this is for everybody, but we're going to start with Jane. Jane, what was your inspiration for this book? What made you think, this is the story I'm going to write?
You know, I wanted to write a sort of a Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson take on for women. And so I've always been interested in archaeology from grade school. And so I sort of put those two things together, and Dr. Cassandra is sort of Sherlock Holmes, and Ari is Dr. Watson.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Carolyn, how about you? Where did Forestlands Lake come from?
My muse spoke very, very loudly and clearly a couple years ago, and one day I blurted out, I want to write a ghost story. And Forestlands Lake is heavily inspired by a small private lakeside community that I nannied at when I was a teenager for 3 summers at 14, 15, and 16. It was a strange time. It was not haunted so far as I know, but lots of teenage shenanigans happened during those summers, and it just seemed like a really good setting for a ghost story. Woods are scary, lakes can be scary. It just sort of seemed perfect, and weird sort of family-oriented communities can be scary. So I don't know. That's sort of just where it took me. It happened really fast. I don't have a really good answer. It just sort of exploded out of my brain once, and that's what happened.
Okay. Erin, how about you? What this is kind of twofold. A, what inspired you, and B, why novellas? Why not a novel?
What inspired me, I like writing first responders romances. This wasn't my first one. I enjoy writing them, and it seems like the readers like reading them. So I knew I wanted to do another first responder story. And the first story that featured the firefighter was actually in my head. And I actually did sort of play around with the idea of making that a full-length novel. But I don't know, just somewhere in the process of feeling out that story, I thought, okay, what about 3 novellas? It features 3 different couples. They can all be read standalone, but actually, if you read them together, you'll see that they sort of intertwine, because all of these ladies are part of a group of friends that support each other. So,
okay. And Jesse, how about you? Where's the inspiration for Serenity?
So Serenity is it's sort of a part of a triad of books that follow the Serenity prayer. So Serenity, Courage, and Wisdom, and they all kind of focus on different aspects of substance use and mental health. But I've worked in addiction medicine for, 15 years, and I kind of got tired of reading books where people with substance use issues are the villains, or are treated as morally bankrupt, or, somehow lacking. And that seems to be really prevalent. And that's not my experience of people who, have the disease of addiction. And so, Beverly Cleary said, if you don't find the book on the shelf that you want to read, write it yourself. So that was kind of what I did. And so I had this idea of looking kind of in this book of a very personal story of recovery. And then with the other 2 kind of moving out to the community, and then to more like a policy, sort of more governmental look at these issues. So that's how it started.
Okay, great. Jesse, let's stay with you for this next question. And again, it's for everybody. Jesse, you're first. Do you have like a writing routine? And if so, what is it?
That's a good question. Before it was much more routinized, but I have little kids now, so it's like, if they're crawling on me, I try to get some done. But mostly now, especially with COVID, it was like whatever I could find time. And so often it was like between 10:30 and midnight would be when I could squeeze in some time, because everybody was home and, everything was happening like in our living room. So that was the time when there was nobody else up, and I wasn't worried that like the kids were licking the door handles and, you know, the things that all of a sudden you were super worried about, these things that you weren't worried about before. So that was like the quiet time, even the pets were asleep. So that's kind of become a little bit of my writing time.
Okay.
Which isn't great for my sleep.
I can imagine. Jane, how about you? Do you have a routine or?
When I'm writing, I am obsessed. I write every waking hour almost, and then I dream when I'm asleep about it. And so it depends on where I am in the book. Everybody says that the middle of the book is difficult, and I find that to be true also. But I'm pretty much right every minute that I can possibly do. I'm a consultant, self-employed consultant, so I'm able to manage time around that, around my work, to write. So I just get obsessed. I admit it.
Okay. My name is Jane, and I'm obsessed. Carolyn, how about you? Do you have a routine?
No, hard no, and no routine. I too have young children, a full-time job. My writing, my initial sort of first draft sketches take place usually in Google Docs, so I can do it, you know, from my phone. I often have chapters or dialogue written in an email or draft that I just send to myself, and it sort of goes along like that for a while until I sort of can get a chance to sit down and copy and paste stuff into an actual manuscript that looks like something. No, there's no set time. It's just whenever I feel inspired, whenever I get a minute, basically.
Okay. All right. And Erin, how about you?
So I feel like I should have some little kids to give me an excuse for the way that I write, but typically what I do is I send in a proposal to my publisher and get a contract and set myself about a 6 to 9 month deadline. And that's followed by about 3 to 5 months of procrastination, and then writing the entire book in the last 2 to 3 months. So it just varies. It's like everything else. I mean, it depends on where I'm at in the story. I brainstorm in the car on my ride home a lot. So a lot of scenes come to me at that point. So I'll walk in the door and I'm like, walk past my wife. I'm like, wait, I got to write this down before I forget it, you know, that kind of thing. So.
Okay. And that actually brings up something, an interesting question that I always, well, I think it's interesting. The rest of you may go, whatever. Do you use, like, Carolyn mentioned Google Docs and things like that. What kinds of tools do you use to accomplish your writing? Do you like have voice activation on your phone that you like say something if you're thinking about it and you're driving or anything like that? What kind of tools do you have other than I've got a computer and Microsoft Word? Jane, how about you? I see you nodding.
I write on a laptop and I use Word. And I use a tool called Writer's Diet, DIET, which is absolutely wonderful. And it'll take your whatever you've created and run through. Did you put in too many that's? You know, did you? And it runs through all the mistakes that I tend to make. And it's really, really valuable. And you know, the features on Word, the thesaurus and the spell check and everything, I know you can't totally depend on those, but those are very useful. So I write on a laptop.
Okay. Carolyn, how about you? Do you have anything besides like?
No, I think what I actually really need is like a waterproof notebook for the shower, because just there's a lot of inspiration hits me, you know, sort of like really inconvenient times. So that would be helpful. But no, I have a lot of devices. We've got like 2 desktops, 3 laptops, 2 tablets, 3 phones, just amongst the family, work stuff, whatever. So wherever I land, that's where I sit down, and just an email to myself works, you know, for a rough draft of whatever I'm thinking about.
Okay. Erin, how about you?
So I want to be more organized than I am. So I have dabbled in Scrivener a little bit, and I found that it doesn't work for me. It takes too much focus away from the process to try and be that organized. So I mean, the draft is written in Word on my laptop, but I like pen to paper when a scene hits me. If I'm at work, I'll grab a piece of paper. I'm constantly jotting down scene notes and shoving them in my pocket, and then I get home later and I can actually flesh it out. So when it's such a vague idea or just the beginning of an idea, I like pen to paper.
Okay. Jesse.
I've toyed with the idea of Scrivener too. I used to use it ages ago, but I thought about going back, but like the organization seems daunting. When I'm working on a proposal or just fleshing stuff out, I have little field notebooks and a larger notebook, and that's almost exclusively where I do that work, because I can take it with me anywhere. Not in the shower though. I get a lot of ideas in there too, which is really inconvenient. And then when I'm actually writing, it's usually just on Word on a just whatever computer I happen to be in front of.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Yeah. About a decade ago, I actually did write, nothing for publication, but I did write. And I had a friend in Hong Kong who was my writing partner. And it was the same thing. She'd be like, okay, it's time for me to go take a shower. I'll be back in a few minutes. And then she'd come back and suddenly it was like ideas. And there were the ideas for the story. And I would commute from my suburb to downtown Chicago. And I had composition notebooks or pads of yellow line papers, and same thing. I'd be writing. Heck with tearing a laptop on the train. No, I'd write it there and back. When I got home, it went into the computer and got edited. So I get everything you guys are saying. It's fascinating. I always like to hear what other people do. What song best represents your book?
Wow.
It's kind of a frivolous question, but it's kind of still related to your book. So, because, you know, I know a lot of writers will say, I have a playlist that gets me in the mood of my book or whatever. Not everybody does, but some do. So is there a song or a type of music or an artist that you kind of go, when I hear this, I associate it with this particular book? And whoever wants to answer first, go, and then we'll do the rest.
Well, I'll go.
I know this one. Go ahead, Jane.
Well, the Crystal's Curse is set in Egypt, and Donna and I were able to take a river cruise to Egypt a couple of years ago, right before COVID hit. And the music there is haunting and amazing. And I would say that inspired a lot of the story, Egyptian kind of music.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for not saying Walk Like an Egyptian by the Bangles. Carolyn, how about you? What were you going to say?
This is the one I practiced because my answer like last month for my dirt nap reading was just like, you know, I was just so caught off guard by this question and I didn't have time to think. Okay, so I practiced this one. My song for the other side of Forestlands Lake is by Robin Hitchcock. It's called "The Ghost in You." It's not a ghosty song, although it is a little bit haunting, but it's actually about not being able to get someone out of your head. Because you know, I entered it in paranormal because I think that's the primary sort of element of this story, but it really could have been in a romantic blend as well. You know, it is a romance heavy book, a second chance romance, and so when my characters come back together, they have very clearly been thinking a lot about each other over the years.
Okay. Erin and Jesse?
I actually just pulled up my playlist for the novella to kind of run through this, because it's been a little bit since I wrote this book, and I've got a new playlist rolling now. So lots of Pink, Secondhand Serenade, Passenger, Great Big World, a little bit of Demi Lovato, Lots more pink for this book. So a little bit of Lady Gaga, that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Jesse?
So it's interesting that you brought up music. So when I write, I don't necessarily have a song for the whole book, but I will often have a song for either a specific character or like the mood of a character or the character's feel. So there was a book that I wrote a while ago, and one character had like a very specific attitude and an outlook on life. And so her like outlook on life was very much like that Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy song, just like country dance party. Like that was her, like the way she moved through the world. And then a backstory for another character in another book was like, Carrie Underwood has a song about like not enough rain in Oklahoma, I think, to wash away the sins out of this house, something like that. And so that was kind of like the mood of her backstory. So I have songs in mind when I'm writing characters usually. And so for Kit's story, it's a song that no one will know because my father wrote it, but it's called Cowboy Up. And so that was Kit's. It's kind of like, you know, life throws things at you and you have to kind of make a decision whether you're going to move forward or whether you're going to kind of let life steamroll over you. So that was Kit's kind of like her backstory and her sort of general way of moving through the world. So I don't have one for the entire book, but I often characters or pieces of their history get a specific song when I write.
Totally valid. I like it. Totally valid.
It sort of answers your question.
Yeah, it totally answers my question. And I know that Carrie Underwood song that you're talking about, and holy crap, does that one hit you right there?
Yeah.
It just hits you in the feels. That's a powerful song. I love it. So now that you know your Goldie finalists, awesome, wonderful, woo woo woo. But is what have you recently released, or what are you working on now that's going to be released soon? Or maybe you have something that's going to be released soon and you're working on something for after that. What's next after all of these books? Jesse, go with you.
So in April, Courage came out, which is sort of so they're all standalone. I don't know if you can hear the screaming child in the background. I apologize. She's fine. She's just 3. So the Serenity Prayer is, there's 3 parts to it. And so Courage is the second part of the Serenity Prayer. That came out in April. All of the books are standalone. So if you haven't read Serenity and you pick up Courage, you don't need to have read any of the others. That came out in April. And then in December, Wisdom is coming out. So that will be the third part of this little trio. And they're, like I said, they're all standalone. So if one sounds better than the other, that's great. If, you know, all 3, even better for me and hopefully for you. But, you know, they're a loosely tied together set.
Okay, great. Erin?
So in February, I actually am in a novella collection and wrote, it's a Secret Valentine collection. So I have that coming out in February. I'm one of 3 Bold Strokes authors in that collection. I guess I really enjoyed novellas because I did another one, but and I also actually just started working on, I just started taking notes on an idea. And since we were talking about music, it was actually inspired by this song that I'm a little bit obsessed with right now. It's by Reese Lewis, and it's called No Right to Love You. And it's one of those like really just emotional songs. And it kind of put me in just the right headspace to start thinking about the story. And it's going to be like a second chance romance kind of thing.
Okay. Carolyn?
Okay, let's see, this past April, the 3rd book in the Curtis and Reynolds romantic thriller series that I write, Zero Chill, was released with Bella Books. In January will be the release of a book called The Raven and the Banshee. We just did the cover release, which is my swashbuckling, bodice-ripping lesbian pirate adventure. And I am actually working at present on I guess kind of an action adventure thriller thing that I don't have a contract for or anything. I'm just writing it. It's called Kiss Shot, though. Just shoot 'em up car chases, motorcycles, pool playing, dikes, that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. All right. There we go. Pirates, A, and then B, car chases. Hello.
Sure.
Jane, how about you?
Yeah, in August, the Payback Murders will be coming out, and the main character is an agoraphobic book editor, and she starts getting mysterious submissions about murders that she can't really tell if they're fiction or real, and her lawyer who's working with her to help her discover that. So that'll be the Payback Murders in August. And that's already in the hands of the publisher. And I'm just starting to think about a romance that's set in Deadwood, South Dakota. So I'm starting to do the research on that. That's going to be really fun, I think. I don't have it.
Modern Deadwood or historical Deadwood?
No, historical Deadwood. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to modern Deadwood. It's an interesting little town.
Yes.
Fascinating little town. Excellent. Thank you very much. And that kind of brings me to another question. You guys, you dabble in different areas, different genres, and you're like, I'm not just in this box. I have other boxes. But I'm sure that each of you has a box. You're like, get that box away from me. I don't want that box. I don't like that box. If a fairy godmother were to come along and wave her magic wand and say, poof, you're no longer afraid of that box. What area, what genre would that be? What, something that's like completely out of your comfort zone that you're like, hell no now, but she says, hell yes. What would that be? Anybody who has an answer to it, you can go first, and then we'll go around the room.
Well, I'll volunteer. Dystopia and creating future worlds. I can't imagine how someone like Kay Atten does that and does it so well. And it would be very daunting to me to think about trying to create a whole world. That might be kind of fun.
Okay. All right. Well,
Vampires and werewolves, ghosts, horror, that would be well outside my comfort zone, and that would take quite a bit of fairy godmother prodding.
Okay. Carolyn or Erin, either one of you?
I mean, I think I would have to agree with the dystopia. I mean, it's horrible to think about now because of everything we've been through in the last year and a half. But prior to this, maybe the whole, end of times type of scenario and what happens. I watched a series called The 100. Have you seen it? Sort of that vein of things, and just the creativity that it takes to come up with that kind of what would happen if we all went back to the very beginning of there's nothing, on Earth. So I really like the storyline there. So.
Okay. Carolyn, you got something that?
Yeah, actually one of the genres, because I really do want to sort of dip my toe in all the different genres, if I can, just to stretch, just to see if I can do it. I do admit that a sci-fi story I do find daunting, just because of the amount of work, the amount of detail, and the amount of patience. But I do really want to do it because I love to read it. But I have to say one of my most challenging ones in my head is just a contemporary romance. Just two people meet, but sort of nothing else happens except for these two people meeting. And, I have a lot of romance. My books are really romance heavy, but the romance happens around all these external forces going on in their life. And so to be able to write something that actually falls solidly into a romance category without anything else, going on. I'm not so sure about that, although I have the idea, I have the cover, and I have the title, and I know what it's going to be about. It's just a matter of writing it.
Do it.
It makes me nervous. It makes me really, really nervous. I'm like, that sounds boring.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that.
I tried not to say it.
Yeah. Okay.
You can do it. Life is messy in every kind of way. You can still have lots of drama. You don't need ghosts for that.
Yeah. Yeah. You give it a try. We have faith in you.
Yeah.
We have faith in you, Carolyn. Yeah. If I were a writer, which I'm not, but if I were, I agree that kind of fantasy, science fiction, dystopia, I love reading that stuff. You know, I mean, I soak up things like the Hunger Games and the 100 and, you know, things like that. But man, to have that kind of creativity in your mind to sit there and go, and now here's this whole new world. And not only that, to do the research, which brings me to a question of, do you do a lot of research?
So for my first responders novels, I work in the 911 system. I've worked in several different positions, and actually 2 years ago, I changed jobs within the system, but I've always, for 20 plus years, I've been in the 911 system. So, I mean, it doesn't require a ton of research because it's what I'm immersed in. Sure. For the first responder stuff. But for the other books, my boring contemporary romance books.
Sorry. I apologize.
I do tend to do some research. I mean, if I'm giving a character a profession, I don't want it to read like I don't totally know, anything about it. I mean, you can get away with some of that by not getting super detailed into the intricacies of their work, because the book is more about the story between the two characters. But I do as much research as I need to make the story feel authentic. I hope.
Okay. Jane, I'm sure you had to do quite a bit of research.
Yes, for the Crystal's Curse, for sure. I want to talk though about the one before this, Jobina's Blues. Jobina's Blues is like a two time frames, one in 1920s America in the South with a Black jazz singer, and then moving forward to the 1960s with a folk singer. And so the research on that was just fun and amazing, because I'm from the South originally, so I I knew a lot about the South, but to try and capture that 1920s world where this jazz singer, and she's involved with the woman who dances in her chorus. And I had wonderful beta readers for that, because they kept me on the straight and narrow about things and making the book really authentic. And just to give an example, I had the dancer at one point looking in the mirror and touching her hair. And one of my beta readers said, a young Black woman in the 1920s would never touch her hair in the mirror because she would mess up her hair. And another situation, when the woman's asking the guy who's come back from World War I, did you kill anybody? And one of my beta readers who's in the military said, that's a terribly unfeeling question for somebody to ask. And unless you're trying to make your character look unfeeling, don't ask that. So I changed that right away. So beta readers, very important in Jobina's Blues. And, the internet, my God, what would we do without the internet for research?
Mm-hmm. True. Jessica, Carolyn, research?
It depends on the book, how much research I have to do. Kind of like Erin said, I worked in addiction medicine for a long time. So for Serenity, it was not as much research, but I certainly wanted to make sure that things were authentic and that things that I wasn't as familiar with felt real and felt authentic, the emotions of it, the feelings. So there's still research that I had to do. And I feel like, you want to make sure that it feels real to people that know more than you do about something, but you know, you don't have to go into as much detail so that somebody who is whatever profession is like, well, you didn't get that detail right. You don't want to pull somebody out of the story. So I definitely do research, but it depends on how detailed I need to go. And the internet is a godsend.
Okay. Carolyn, research? Yes, no, maybe?
I do at times. For the most part, I tend to just gravitate to writing what I know. You know, sort of pulled from my own life experience. But for example, my pirate action adventure actually does take place during the golden age of piracy, the early 1700s. So there certainly was some, I mean, it's not intended to be a history lesson in any way, shape, or form, but certainly research was involved.
Sure.
You know, that
You watched all of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
I did. Well, you know what? That's funny. That's funny you say that, because I was telling my brother about it, and I was like, "Oh, I write this pirate story." He was like, "So you like did research for it, or you watched Black Sails?" And was like, "Yeah, that." I was like, "Oh, you got me." Yes, that kind of research. Yes.
Oh man, well, we are out of time. I don't want I could sit here and talk to you guys for hours. I would enjoy it. You probably wouldn't. But thank you so very much for being here today, for taking time out of your weekend to spend with us on this. I really do appreciate it. Again, if you can hear my voice, go buy their books. Buy their books, read their books, love their books. Tell your friends to buy their books, read their books, and love their books. And congratulations again on being Goldie Finalists. Yay! And I hope that we will see everybody again who can hear my voice at the Goldie Awards on July 31st. If not, our entire conference that runs through the month of July. We've got some really great things happening. So again, thank you, everyone. Well done. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Take care.
Thanks,
Yeah, everyone.
thank you.